Hi guys, it is Julie from the past, future, present. We are about to segue into the very first show of mine here for the Writer's Block, which is a podcast for writers. When we record our audio for the podcast, we also simultaneously record video. So I'm about to cue you into myself, Amber from Amber's Books and More, and Abel from Young Adult Author Show, as we talk about Writer's Block on the Writer's Block podcast. I am so excited to introduce you to this. We will also have listed down below all of our social media as well as all of the places where you can listen to the podcast. We are on a ton of different platforms. We have the introduction going up today also over on Abel's channel where you can get to know a little bit about all of us. And then this is our first episode on the Writer's Block. So definitely check it out. It is a longer podcast, but it is chock full of really, really cool information for writers to keep you inspired and to get over that nasty writer's block. So here we go.
Hey there everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the Writer's Block. Today we are going to be discussing the actual writer's block, and the moderator for this show is Julie. So Julie, why don't you take it away?
Hi guys, we are here today to talk about writer's block. Is it real? Is it not? How do we deal with it if it is? All things writer block. If you're any kind of a writer, no matter what it is, whether you're doing technical writing, essay writing, school writing, creative writing, everybody has heard of and dealt with in some way, shape, or form the dreaded writer's block, when inspiration will not come to you and words will not find you. And it seems like your ability to write has completely gone away. So we're going to talk today about how we deal with that and what kind of tools and tips and tricks we have for that, whether or not we can totally bust the myth that it even exists. And so that is what we're going to discuss.
Yeah.
Abel, I would love to know your thoughts on this, because I know a little bit about how Amber and I handle it, because we peer write a lot, but I would love to know what you think about writer's block. Do you think it's real?
I think, so for a while I thought it was a real thing, but I also feel like I read this quote, and I'm sure it's a very popular quote. It's like, there's no such thing as writer's block, just like sit your ass in the chair. Excuse me, but it's the quote. It's like, sit your ass in the chair and just get to writing. Now, that's sometimes easier said than done, but I'll tell you, when I was writing my third book, I was really struggling. But what I decided to do is I would literally write, and I was just writing like, I don't know what to say. This is crap. Oh my God, why am I doing this? But doing that and I did that for 3 days straight because I just didn't know where my story was going. But after that, I just like knocked it out, and within like the next 2 weeks after that, I finished the book. So I do believe in writer's block, but I think it's like you play tricks on yourself, you know? I feel like it's a mind game, and I think that if you just sit in the chair and do it, any kind of writing, I think that it'll start to come back around to you.
Yeah. What do you think, Amber? What's your take?
Well, so I believe that writer's block is a thing, but do I believe that there's some like magical block inside of my head that's keeping me from writing? No, of course not. It's always something else. You're procrastinating. You are self-doubting yourself. You don't know what you're doing with your story. You're trying to pants too much. You're trying to plot too much. There's always something else happening. So it's not just like some magical like, oh, writer's block, I can't write today. Well, find out the reason why you can't write, and then you can write again, you know?
I agree. I think that for a lot of, especially newer writers, having writer's block is a great excuse for not having to sit down and put in the hard work. It's kind of one of those things where you're like, oh, it's not going to happen today because the words are hard to come by. And some days that word count is a struggle from word 1 to word whatever your goal is that day. And it's just not easy. And for a lot of people, that's where they go, oh, it's writer's block. It's just not coming to me today. It's not flowing. Like my fingers aren't flying over the keys. So it's just not my day. I'm going to just go ahead and put it aside. And I think that that's sometimes healthy, you know, like if it's really that torturous, like put it aside for the day, write something else, like switch to a different work in progress. But in terms of having like an actual writer's block where you just can't sit down and write, I think that if you're going to seriously attempt to be a writer and your goal is to have published works, or your goal is to actually get somewhere with your writing, then having a schedule and writing every day is just a part of what you do. And that means that writer's block is not a thing. So what do you do on days where, because we've all had it, like on days where the word count is just not coming and it's like a serious struggle. My question is, when you get in that mindset where you start to psych yourself up and think that it's just not going to happen that day, what do you do to break yourself out of that cycle and stop that train of thought so that you can go ahead and have a productive writing day? So Abel, what would be your go-to?
I'll tell you, I've had those days. I had those years. My first book took 3 years to write because I would edit as I wrote, and that's like the biggest sin. Like, do not do that. And so I did that, and I just couldn't ever find like where I wanted the story to go. And so I put it away for like about a week. All right, honestly, I started to read more because I have found that reading really does help with the writing. And not only reading, if I get tired of reading, I go on these like Netflix binges. But like, I don't know about you all, but me, and this can be a topic for a later show, Netflix, I watch shows a lot differently now that I have written books and I have been through editing process. I watch shows a lot differently now. I kind of like look for the character development, and I look for where the story's going, and I look for, just the different like plot holes. And so now watching TV shows really does help with my writing. So anytime I feel like that dark cloud that I call writer's block coming along, I'll put whatever I'm writing away for a week or two, and I'll read or I'll watch Netflix, and I'll dissect, that helps me dissect other people's work. And when I get back to mine, I usually can tell, okay, this is where the problem was. So that's kind of what I do for my writer's block now.
Yeah, sometimes taking that step back just for a little bit can make a huge difference in pushing forward again productively. How about you, Amber?
What's funny, though, is I'm the exact opposite as Abel. Reading actually makes it worse for me because I start to see how great someone's finished product is, and it makes me doubt myself even more because my writer's block is centered more around self-doubt than anything else. And TV helps sometimes but my problem, I can't binge because then I won't sleep. I won't do anything else. But when I do get, writer's block, as they say, first I cry for a few hours, and then I eat chocolate, and then I text my writer friends because my writer friends can motivate me more than anybody else. So sometimes I'll text Julie and I'll say, I don't know what I'm doing. And she's like, it's good, just keep going. And then she's like, I'm going to come up there and I'm going to, kick you in the behind if you don't get going. And I'm like, okay, I'll do it. And then I get back into it. But I can't read. So don't feel bad everybody's different, obviously. Reading it makes it worse. Much worse.
Yeah. Reading for me can sometimes work, but it has to be something that's pretty removed from what I'm writing. If it's something different than what I'm writing, then I'm fine. If I tend to, and I know Amber feels the same way, if I read something that's too closely related to what I'm actually trying to write, sometimes it starts to like merge too much, or I feel like it's influencing my writing too much, so I have to kind of separate that a little bit. And I wish Netflix worked for me, but I would 100% never write and just legitimately sit down and never move from my television and binge watch something. Like, I don't have an off button when it comes to finding a new show that I love. I'll never go back to writing. So for me, I do one of a couple different things. One, I think that it's really, really good for me to have accountability. So I use social media and say, like, listen, guys, tonight I have to hit this word count. I'm going to move through this. This is what I'm going to do. And I use social media instead of a deterrent and a distraction as a motivator to hold myself accountable. I also like to sometimes, if I'm working on my novel and the novel is just a struggle bus that night, I will move on and do flash fiction. I'll take a picture off the internet and use that as inspiration to write a short story. Or I'll write fanfic about characters in my novel, but it doesn't have to be canon and it doesn't have to be something that makes it into the book, but I'm still writing in that world. And I'll find a different way to write that gets me outside of my headspace of that scene that is like a struggle that day. As long as I'm still writing that day, that's a win. Even if it's not towards my current work in progress, that for me is still a win. And I can kind of get out of that negative headspace of like, this scene isn't working and I don't know how to make it work. and just feel good about something that I wrote, even if it's unrelated. So for me, that's been really great, and that's one of the things that influenced my book that I already did publish, which was short stories, flash fiction, and poetry, which was just my way of getting out of my own head sometimes. So for me, that really works, just to kind of take myself out of that.
Yeah, and even to give an example of what, considered writer block is when I felt like the character that I was writing, and Julie can attest to this because she's the one that actually, that exact advice is what she gave me, and my character completely quit talking to me. I didn't know what he wanted. I didn't know where he was going. He just abandoned me, and I was really depressed. She said, just write something else. So I picked a different character out of my story and kind of started giving him his backstory and saying, hey, this is kind of where he came from, just so that I would know. And as soon as I started writing about this other character, my main character was like, oh no, honey, you're not gonna ignore me. This is what you're gonna do. And then he came back and I started writing and it flowed even better.
Yeah, I've had a very similar experience where I didn't ever think to put it like that. Like my main character, like, stopped talking to me. I kind of felt like she abandoned me. I was like, well, she like left me out in the cold, and like she's like, I'm not letting you in my head. Like, you're not going to see the future. Like, I swore up until that day that I was writing, I knew exactly how I wanted the book to end, and it's like I woke up with amnesia, and I was like, what the hell happened? Well, I went back and I kind of reread some stuff that I wrote, and I had just introduced a new character, and it was a new character that there was no real reason to introduce this character, but I knew I wanted this character, and so I kind of did what Amber did. I kind of said, well, why am I introducing this character? And I kind of built like a whole character profile for him, and this is what he's going to do later on, and this is who he's going to be with, and this is what's going to happen later on. And then my main character was like, literally was like, okay, now you're ready for me. Like, now, now this is, like, I needed to fill in, why did this character come in the story? And now that I filled in that character's purpose, my character's like, we can continue down my path.
Yeah, and I think that that's really important, and I want that to be a future topic for sure, is getting to know your main characters and doing character bio sheets and just really, really knowing them before you start writing, and obviously leaving room for them to grow. But I think that that's huge, and I think that that's one of the things that can be a real struggle, is when you start to write and you introduce a new character, but you haven't spent that time to build who they are in your head. It's very hard to move forward with them because you don't know them as well as the characters that you've already been writing with. So I think that that's a great future topic as well. But spending time with them, or doing, I know people do like character aesthetic sheets, or where they take different pictures and quotes and things that speak to them about that character, can be really motivating to just kind of do anything creative to get you back into like a positive headspace to move forward with your writing. I think is a great option for a writer's block. And then I think that there's, at least for me, I'd love to know your thoughts on this. And I think that this is also another great future topic, but like, how do you schedule your writing time? I think that writer's block is a less of an issue for people if you make writing a part of your daily life, or if you've made time goals or page goals or word count goals that you hold yourself accountable to, because I think the more you write, the more it works for you. And the more infrequently you pick up your writing, I think the harder it is to get back into it. I notice that if I do consistent nights of writing, it flows a lot better than if I take a week off and then try to jump back into it again. So what do you guys find with that? Abel, do you find any correlation between how often you write to how well it comes to you?
Yeah, but again, like I'll get that cloud of writer's block over me, and that's when I purposely put away my work for like a week or two. And right now it's been about going on 2 weeks that I haven't written a word, but I have a bunch of ideas. I know where I left off, so I know like once I get back to it, which I have a day that I'm going to start, I have it scheduled, like you said, for me to start back up. I know exactly where I'm picking up, and I know I'm ready to go. I'm excited again. It kind of reignites. I think writer's block tends to like, it puts the, like, I don't know, the fear, or it puts, like, it intimidates you, right? It's like, that's like, am I good enough? Is this good enough? No, I don't know. But now I feel kind of confident again, going back into it. I think that's just really, like, again, I think that having a topic later on about scheduling your writing would be very important, though, because me, like I said, I have a schedule, like a day that I'm going to start my writing back up, because if I didn't, this break would be forever. So I'm loving it.
I actually have kind of two things to that I want to add. So not only scheduling is very important, but you have to learn your creativity window. Everyone has a window of time that they are the most creative, whether that's if it's in the morning, if it's at lunchtime, or if it's at night. You learn your window, and if you only write, or not only write, but if you mostly schedule your time during your window, you're going to be more successful and write more words. And then another thing is that I've kind of thought about a lot lately, but I'm not working on a new project. I'm revising an old one, so I haven't been able to put it into practice. But Jay Kristoff, one of my favorite authors, on his Instagram story, he had talked about becoming excited to write the next day. He said if you have a pivotal scene coming up, let's say, your character's in a knife fight, he said he will write all the way up until right as the knife fight is about to happen and stop. And that way the next day he's so excited to write that knife fight scene that he gets to writing and gets done even more work.
I think that's a very good thing for writer's block. I've done that. I've literally just halfway through a sentence, I'm like, okay, that's all my writing for tonight. Because I know the next day I'm like, oh, it's going to be good. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like looking forward to it.
Oh my God, that would give me such anxiety. I don't think I'd be able to sleep if I knew that there wasn't a period or some kind of end punctuation. I'd be like, what do you mean? Like, I could never leave it in the middle of a sentence.
I could leave in the middle of a paragraph, but not a sentence.
No, honestly. And then, like, I'll go all day at work, and I'll come home, 12 hours later, and it's like, just like a halfway through a word, I haven't even finished spelling the word. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I'm going to say...
Right.
I could never.
No, but I definitely have started to implement that a lot more in my writing as well. I have these, like, amazing scenes, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I really want to get through this, like, pivotal, moment. And then I know that the next scene is kind of going to be one of those, like, transition scenes that's going to be, like, a rough one to start writing at. So I definitely will leave off where I'm still excited about an action kind of a scene, and then also write that transitional scene so that I leave off at the start of another action, or plot point scene, so that I don't have a full night of writing, because that's my window, is my night. I write at night a lot. So I don't have a full day's worth of writing that's like a transitional scene that's kind of like lagging. I'm like, oh, why am I doing this to myself? So I think where you start and where you stop is also great. And I think in terms of writer's block, if you're having a rough time, and I know this isn't how everybody writes, so it really is personal, but maybe skip ahead to a scene that is coming that you're excited for, or fill in a little bit of a scene that you felt was lacking before, that you made a note like, hey, flesh this out a little bit more. Go back and do that then, while you're still looking for that inspiration. Not everybody can jump around in scenes and chapters when they're writing, but if that's something you can do, and the scene you're working on is not speaking to you, maybe move on to another one and then come back, if that's something that you can do in your writing.
Yeah, Scrivener.
Let your future self deal with it. Don't
And Scrivener really helps. If for people that can jump around, they make it really easy for you to do that. I wish I could. I really can't. I can't go and write 3 chapters from now, and then I can't go back and forth like that. But I do, like you said, go back and I'll figure out what I'll fix something that I did before, or I just reread it and I'm like, I fall in love with it again, or so. I kind of agree with that. Like I said, the whole thing with the character that I introduced, I had to figure out that character before my main character allowed me to go on with her story.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, and which, with my other book, I think that, sorry, Julie, with my book now, I am a very linear writer, but the problem was the book that I'm writing, or that I'm working on, it splits points of view from the present day and the past, and I was just going in order of, the chapters, oh, this is a story, this is the present, this is the past, this is the present, and it was messing me up, and then I was like, okay, let's take out the present and just finish the past, and then I can fill in the present. That was the only time I've ever been able to technically skip scenes, but I think really I was making myself not skip scenes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying, especially when you have dual timelines like that. It doesn't necessarily work for me either, but it is something that I know that other writers have implemented when they've been struggling. So it was worth bringing up there, I guess. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's just not something that I've allowed myself to fall into the trap for, having this writer's block. It's not one of the vices that I allow myself as a writer. And I've either learned that I can push through it or I need to step aside. But either way, I'm not blaming it on writer's block. So for me, when I see people say that, I'm not denying that for some people it is an issue. But I think it is a lot of the way you view your work and the way you view your process, as opposed to an actual thing that needs to be feared in the writing world.
Yeah, and I think the writer's block is used more as a crutch or an excuse in the beginning of a writer's career. But I think later on, especially if you have an agent or something and deadlines start becoming real, again, another topic we could talk about is deadlines, right? Because I do self-imposed deadlines because if you don't do a self-imposed deadline and you're a self-publishing author, you'll never have a book out. And so, yeah, I think that writer's block, like Julie said, I don't allow it. I don't say I'm suffering from writer's block today. I say, like, I don't feel like writing today. And that's just, if I don't feel like writing today, I know I'm going to have to make up for it tomorrow or the next day. But today I'm not feeling it. And you know what? It's okay. I'm going to go read, or I'm going to go and watch a TV show. And that's just, you have to keep living life, and you can't make yourself feel bad about it. Just also don't blame it on writer's block, because the next day, for all you know, you might sit down and write 10,000 words and be like, what the hell? Where did this come from? And I'm sure we've all had days like that where I'm sure we all sit down one day. We all had that day where you sit down and you're like, what the hell happened? Like, I wrote gold today. Like, but, yeah.
You just pray when you go back to edit that it actually is gold.
Yeah. Yeah, that's later though.
And not mine's more bronze usually, not gold.
That's all right.
Yeah, I don't ever blame anything on writer's block, and I don't think I ever really have. I've always understood there's something deeper there, and 9 out of 10 times for me, it's you're doubting yourself, you don't think you're good enough, just get the heck out of your own head and just do it,
Yep, I agree. I absolutely think that's where I'm at with the whole myth versus reality, and then how you deal with it, and it really is your outlook and how you view your craft, and just getting out of your own head. And however that is, whatever that is for you, whether you go and do an adult coloring book, or you do Netflix, or you read a book, or you write something different that's completely unrelated, or you fill in backstory, or you do a character sheet. There's always a way to get some creativity in. As long as you're doing that every day, I think you're good.
Yep.
I agree.
Same.
Any other thoughts on writer's block?
No, just like you said, don't let it beat you, and just acknowledge it and move on, and that's it. At the end of the day, you control your writing, and you control whether you're going to write it or not. Just don't use, that quote, I have writer's block. Don't use that. Just say, I don't feel like writing today, and that's okay. I'm gonna freaking nail it tomorrow.
As long as you come back and nail tomorrow, I think, Abel, you had a really good point. Like, give yourself a timeline, like, okay, you're in a funk for whatever reason. Life happens. There's a life outside of writing. So you're in a funk. That's fine. But make sure you hold yourself accountable to at least start back up at some point, or else that funk can last way longer than you're happy with.
Yep.
Yeah, and if you need some inspiration, if you have writer's block, come listen to the writer's block. Shameless plug.
Well, guys, I think that about wraps it up then for writer's block, myth or not, and then how to deal with it, which is our first official topic for the Writer's Block podcast. I am super excited. I think that this was incredibly motivational. I'm feeling good about it. I'm glad to know that I'm not the only one that doesn't really fall victim to the writer's block, and that we all kind of have similar viewpoints on it, even if we have differing ways of dealing with it.
Yep,
I agree.
And if you are listening to the audio and you want to watch the video to this, you can check that out on Julie's Pages and Pens YouTube channel, and the link for that will be posted in the description, so you can watch the video and see all of our crazy faces on there.
Absolutely. And if you guys have any topics for future shows that you would like to recommend to us, definitely check us out at the Writer's Block Twitter handle, which will be listed in the description of our audio and our videos. And all of our information will be down there, so that if you have any topics that you would love to hear us discuss, we definitely come up with some as we're talking, things through in the show live. But if you have any recommendations, be sure to leave those with our Twitter account.
Yep, and we will talk to you guys in a couple of weeks. Thank you for joining us today.
Bye everyone.